Okay, so we are live, and as promised, I have Neca's Defenders of the Earth, Lothar. And this is the last of the Defenders of the Earth figures that I've bought so far. I might try to get the Phantom at some point, even though, like I've said before, I already have the original Superheroes version, and I kind of feel like that one's superior to this version anyway. But I do want the little critter that comes with them. I think that's pretty cool. So for completion's sake, I might go ahead and try to get the Phantom at some point. But yeah, let's have a look at the artwork. So here we go. We have the Defenders of the Earth logo on the side in all its Flash Gordon inspired glory. Got a portrait of Lothar. That's a close-up photograph of the figure. Got a really tough, expression on its face with a lot of character to it. This is a tough guy, and in fact it says that he's the strongest man on earth. So yeah, and then there's the artwork of Lothar on the front. Nice powerful image of him punching towards the camera, and it says with grappling hook, rope, blaster, and blast effects. So the grappling hook, he got a lot of use out of that grappling hook on the Defenders of the Earth show. So yeah, it says Lothar, the strongest man on the earth. His strength is a legend. His skills conquer all. One with his power, he never will fall. Lothar. So again, that was from the Defenders of the Earth theme song that was written by Stan Lee. He wrote the lyrics for that, because this was a show that was produced by Marvel Entertainment long before they became Marvel Studios and created the MCU. They made the KF TVU with the King Features television universe, which was basically just this show. I don't know if they were involved with the Prince Valiant show that would have come along shortly after, but Prince Valiant did appear on Defenders of the Earth, so maybe they'll do a figure of him for this line. Who knows? I know they didn't get around to doing that with the original line. So I've got Flash Gordon is over there on my shelf, and the Phantom is actually over there on two separate sides of the room for whatever reason. But I do still have Ming the Merciless on hand, which I believe is the best figure that was made in this line so far. He looks fantastic. And to be the best figure in NECA's Defenders of the Earth line, that's you ain't no slouch, obviously, because this is a great line of action figures. So it does have credits on here, so let's go ahead and read the credits. Product development, Randy Falk. Sculpting, packaging, and photography, Georgi Jokovic. I need to figure out how to pronounce that name so I don't feel like I'm tripping over it every single time. Fabrication, Anthony Minicino and Roger Fernandez. Paint, John Wardell and Jeffrey Trapp. Prototypes, TrueCast Studios. Character illustration, Georgi Jokovic and Kate Birch. So hopefully I didn't mingle anybody's name too much. I apologize if any of you folks is watching and feel like I did not pronounce your name correctly. Oh, and there's where they put the NECA logo in the style of the old Galoob Toys logo. So let's go ahead and open up Lothar. I'm really excited about this. But yeah, I've got Ming over here, so we can blast Ming once we have the blast effects out of here. And I have Zatara. Not Zatara, Mandrake. Zatara is the knockoff of Mandrake, but I like his daughter. So I got Mandrake on hand over here, so that they can hang out because they're bros. And there we go. So like with the other Defenders of the Earth figures, there's these little plastic inserts that go over the bubble on the inside of the tray. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife, and we're going to cut through the tape, and we will remove those accessories. So of all of Lothar's accessories is a tiny little knife. This is going to look ridiculously small when he's holding it in his hands, but it almost looks like a paring knife. But this is going to fit into the sheath on the front of his vest, so I guess they didn't have a whole lot of room for it. Still, I think I would have rather his knife be a little more substantial than that. You know what I mean? This is not a guy with a small knife. This is a guy who would have a big knife. You know what I'm talking about. He would have like a big old knife, like put Crocodile Dundee to shame. And I actually dropped the longer Ray Blast, so we'll set that aside. And then over here we got some more stuff we got to open up, because we do have his ray gun. And like, I guess, you know, yeah, technically it's supposed to be called a blaster, but to me it's a blaster if it's in Star Wars, and if it's in Flash Gordon, it's a ray gun. And as I said before, I do consider Defenders of the Earth to be a Flash Gordon line of toys. It's Flash Gordon and Friends. Like the logo is clearly inspired by his logo. The villain of the piece is his main villain. You know, it's Flash Gordon and a bunch of other guys. So okay, so here we got a gripping hand, and the other alternate hand is of course a trigger guard hand. So both are in a very dark flesh, and which I feel like is appropriate to Lothar because he is from Africa, so he would be very dark skinned. And then the smaller blast effect. We'll see like how both of those look once we get everything out of the package. And there are some of the infamous rubber tabs that we gotta cut. And man, this one's in here in like a bad spot because I don't want to scrape up against his belt too much. I think I got it. And I probably could try to go through the back, but that would be a pain as well. It's just those rubber bands, those rubber tabs are so tight. If it was a rubber band that went all the way around, it wouldn't be such a big deal. And like with Mandrake that I just opened up yesterday, or not yesterday, it would have been Friday, I think. His head is way deep in here. Like you can see, like that's how deep his head is in this package. And his fists are all the way into these fist holes. So it's not quite as bad as with Mandrake, because Mandrake had that big old top hat, and practically the whole top hat was embedded in there. But it's still enough that I'm going to try to pull him downwards in the package so that he goes up to his elbows in here, and that at least gets his head out, and we can pull him out that way. And then we have Lothar freed from his plastic prison, and that is an impressive looking action figure. He looks very powerful and very cool, and very stiff elbow joints, which I'm gonna very gingerly try to coax. Never try to force your action figure joints because you don't want them to break. So yeah, there we go. I got it. If you got to use some heat, like I like to use a hair dryer. Some people like to use some warm water, but you definitely want to loosen that up. So one thing that strikes me on this Lothar when I look at him is the Defenders of the Earth logo on his chest, which I always just thought of as being like, you know, just like how you have something a printed design on a t-shirt. But in this case, it actually is like a solid disc with like raised detailing to it, and that's kind of interesting. That was an interesting way to go about doing that. And here's a first. Unlike, you know, most of the figures in the Defenders of the Earth line, some of the original superheroes, Flash Gordon and Ming figures, I think those had this, but not all of them. Like I don't think the Mattel card versions of the classic Flash Gordon had this. But he actually has a holster where he can hold his blaster. How cool is that? And I would like it if the other characters had holsters to hold their blasters. I know, like, you know, you could probably put it on Flash and the Phantom, and it wouldn't look too out of place. I don't know how you would do it with Mandrake, but maybe like have it like back behind where like the cape could hold it or something. But I think like it would have been nice to have like sheaths for the swords and holsters for the guns. But I guess since Lothar's look is a little more tactical than those other characters, they felt like they could get away with it a little bit more. I don't remember if the original figure had a holster. I'm sure it didn't have a working holster anyway. But there's a lot of other really cool stuff with this Lothar that kind of updates him a little bit. I really like this buckle at the bottom of his vest. Very detailed, very sharp looking. You can see how like it almost looks like it could be functional. It's not, of course, because the female end of the buckle is solid. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's going to focus that well. But he does use mostly the standard superhero buck that they've been using for these characters. He does seem a little bit larger, but I don't think he actually is. I'm pretty sure these are the same biceps that they've been using on these characters so far. But I think the vest kind of helps to bulk him up a little bit. And I really like this dark skin tone. Like I said, it definitely looks like he's a native of Africa. So that's really cool. And a lot of cool detailing with the dry brushing and airbrushing on the face. Brings out a lot of the kind of craggy details. This is a face that's got a lot of character to it, and it's a tough looking face. Like, this is not a guy you would want to mess with at all. So like I was saying about Mandrake, how I felt like he had like this kind of genuine look of like a 1930. He looks like a guy from the 1930s looking at his facial features, and he definitely has that sort of like gentlemanly look about him. But Lothar is just a bad mofo that you don't want to mess with. He looks really cool. I really like this Lothar head sculpt. It's great. So a lot of detail to the vest, a lot of different textures. You got a lot of different pouches. Let's go ahead and put the knife in the sheath so we can see how that looks. Pretty cool. So yeah, like I said, I do wish he'd had a little bit of a larger knife, but it does look really good once you get into the sheath. And then you've got like lots of belts and straps and pouches, and he's a tough looking guy. One thing I do have a problem with is he does have this elbow pad, but it doesn't seem to be like attached to like any kind of strap or anything like that. It's like it's almost just like they glued it to his elbow. And probably what I would have done is just kind of painted some black around, or some green, or some other. You could even just paint the strap on, and I think it would look better than absolutely nothing at all. But yeah, there's a lot of detail to the belt buckle on the belt, kind of like the buckle I was talking about on the vest. Lots of details, these pouches. Since it is just the regular superhero body, they kind of tried to disguise it a little bit with a lot of these, belts and pouches and straps and things like that. And since it is just a black outfit, I kind of feel like it works. Like if you just got him sitting on the shelf, it looks kind of natural. And it's not until you really investigate it that you find out he's wearing spandex tights that have like a gray pouch just kind of stuck randomly here on the side. It works for what it is. The boots have a lot of good detail to them too. Lots of little pouches and straps and things like that. Now, I'd mentioned in the Mandrake review how like the original version of Lothar in the comic strip, he was basically wearing like this kind of, leopard skin singlet kind of thing. And it might not be the most racially sensitive kind of outfit, even though he's supposed to be a prince from an African nation. Like, it's like that doesn't mean he has to be dressed like that. And I could see how, like, even in the 80s when they did Defenders of the Earth, looking at him and being like, how can we update this guy a little bit and make him a little more cool, a little more tactical? Like I'd mentioned in the Mandrake review how he kind of reminded me of Roadblock when I was a kid. And Roadblock was one of my favorite G.I. Joe characters. It would not surprise me if when they were working on this, and Marvel worked on G.I. Joe as well, it wouldn't surprise me if they were like looking at G.I. Joe as like a good way to update this guy a little bit, or even looking at like Mr. T and his character on the A-Team, who was a little bit more of a military character. But I didn't know any of this stuff when I was a kid because I never read any of the Mandrake comic strips because we didn't have that comic strip in my newspaper. So Defenders of the Earth was my introduction to Mandrake and Lothar, and I wound up really liking those characters, particularly Lothar. I thought Lothar was really cool. So one other thing is that I noticed, and this would definitely be a newer edition, is he's actually got one of those little camelback things. so he can have himself some water. And it does attach to this non-attachable or non-detachable backpack that's just glued on there. It ain't gonna come off. And then he's got this yellow rope coiled up at his shoulder, and you will notice that it does indeed match the yellow that actually is on the rope on the grappling hook. Now let's have a look at that grappling hook while we're at it. It is articulated, and you can open up the grappling hook for action. So there we go. And it does look like it will fit nicely into his hand. So that I can't think of a better segue to go ahead and swap out these hands. So the hands that came default on the figure is 2 solid closed fists. So I can take the solid closed fist from Mandrake and have them fist bump each other. So that's nice. So, and you can see that the right hand is the gripping hand. So that'll be the hand you probably want to use to hold his grappling hook or his knife or whatever. If the knife indeed will fit in that hand, we're going to figure that out. And then the pistol grip is on the left hand. So I guess Lothar's a lefty. And that makes sense because the ray gun itself is on the left hand. So we're gonna see what he looks like while he's holding his accessories. And first, I'm gonna do this knife. So I want to see if he can even hold this knife. And pleasant surprise, he actually does grip it pretty well. I mean, like, not ideally, but if we squeeze it in, you have to get it so that it goes all the way through his hand, and it's actually like the lower figures that seem to be holding it the best. But he can hold this knife, even as tiny as it is. I kind of suspected that it might be a little too small, but no, we can get him to hold it. So that's pretty cool. So I'm pleased about that. So let's go ahead and put that back into its sheath, and we will move on to the next accessory, which is the grappling hook. And like I said, he got a lot of use out of this grappling hook on the show. And I always liked it when figures came with grappling hooks, at least until the string came loose. So hopefully that won't be the case with this one. So there we go. And you can, if you want to, even have the rope through his other hand. Shisha. And that's pretty dramatic. I didn't even mean for his head to tilt up like that, but it does kind of look like he's looking up at the wall and kind of calculating exactly how far he's going to have to throw this grappling hook to get it to catch on the ledge of the building. So, and if you wanted to, you could probably kind of tuck the rope up under the vest a little bit, and then that should add to the illusion that that this rope is indeed connected to the rope that's slung around his shoulder. So we just kind of pinch it in there like that, and it looks like it's all together, right? Pretty cool. So we're going to take that out of his hand, though, because the next accessory we want to look at is the ray gun. And of course, it's the standard Defenders of the Earth ray gun, and it's got that cool blue-purple sheen to it. So I think it looks pretty neat. I'm always happy to have this ray gun again. And since the original, I believe the original Defenders of the Earth figures all came with this same ray gun, it makes sense that the NECA Defenders of the Earth figures all come with this same ray gun. And of course, he looks badass while he's wielding this particular weapon. So we got both the weapons in his hand. That looks pretty cool, I think. So then we have the blast effects. So I don't remember because, oh yeah, I dropped it. I dropped it on the floor. I did eventually find it. I stepped on it. It did not hurt as bad as a Lego. But I found the shorter blast effect from Mandrake eventually. So for anybody wondering about that, that's how that story ended. But yeah, looks pretty cool. He's an impressive looking figure, I tell you what. All right, but that's not all, because we also have the longer blast effect with the impact at the other end of it. So go ahead and pinch that on there. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to want to go on there all the way, and it was kind of droopy. So, and there's what that looks like. And so that we get more of an idea of how that's supposed to work, here's how he blasts Ming with it. Poor old Ming, he gets shot so much. It'd be nice if there were, if well, there is, Ming's a ice soldier guy, but it'd be nice if I had more fill-ins for this line, so I didn't have to be shooting Ming all the time. Looks pretty cool, just like on its own, though, doesn't it? So yeah, and then last but not least, let's have these two guys together and see how they look. Partners in crime fighting. Let's I'm gonna switch them around the other way. So there we go. Mandrake and Lothar ready to fight evil. So pretty cool. So that means that now I have all of the heroes from the Defenders of the Earth line, with the exception of the Phantom, who I might wind up getting the Phantom later, but like I do really like that original superheroes figure, so I kind of feel like I'm not missing out that much. Mandrake and Lothar wound up being much more high priority than the Phantom, even though the Phantom is probably my favorite of these characters. Ironically enough, because I had the original superheroes version, and I kind of felt like that was an itch that had been scratched. But now that I've got all the rest of them, now I'm just looking at the Phantom, thinking maybe I ought to get that Phantom too. Like, as much as I love that original superheroes version, maybe I should have the cartoon version also. Technically, they are supposed to be different versions of the Phantom, so technically they're different characters. So it is justified. I believe that the Defenders of the Earth is supposed to take place in the future. Like, it would still be in the future. I think it's supposed to take place like I think he's like the 25th Phantom or something like that. I forget exactly what. But yeah, he was not the same Phantom from the comic strip and the one that Billy Zane played. So I don't think he was the same Phantom for Phantom 2040 either. So that they would have been different Phantoms, I suppose. But yeah, these are great figures, and I love them, and I'm so happy to have Mandrake and Lothar finally to complete the Defenders of the Earth team, at least as they were represented in the original line. So they never did figures of the kids for whatever reason. Like maybe they just figured figures of the kids wouldn't sell that well, and the show insisted on having the kids in there so the kids watching at home would have somebody to relate to. But I didn't really want to be Lothar's son. I wanted to be Lothar. I didn't want to be Flash Gordon's son. I wanted to be Flash Gordon. I certainly didn't want to be the Phantom's daughter. Just wanted to be the Phantom. But I liked those characters anyway. I especially liked the Phantom's daughter because she was cute. I had kind of a crush on her. But yeah, so it's really cool to have these because I didn't have the original Defenders of the Earth figures when I was a kid. I enjoyed the show, so I don't know why I didn't buy the figures. Maybe I just was too distracted by like Superpowers and He-Man and G.I. Joe and Transformers. But I do remember watching the show and liking it, so I'm really glad to have these figures as part of my collection in my adulthood. So that's pretty much that. That's all I have to say about Lothar. And I think I'm going to call it a day on this video. So I'll be back with something tomorrow, but I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. So I guess you'll find out when I do that video, won't you? But if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Tell me what you think about Lothar and Mandrake and the rest of the Defenders of the Earth in general. I thought like it might be a cool idea to like see somebody try to do like a more modern take on Mandrake. And maybe like somebody like Idris Elba or somebody could play Lothar, and that might be kind of cool. But kind of like my idea for Mandrake was kind of similar to the old Bill Bixby television show, The Magician. So maybe not quite as fantastical as the comic strip was, but dealing with a little more like real world issues and organized crime and things like that. So I don't know. I think it could work pretty well. even though Mandrake is obviously a character that's based on early 20th century archetypes, stuff that was popular like 100 years ago. Like, I'm sure Harry Houdini was an influence on this guy. Like, I think you could still find a way to make it appeal to modern audiences, and I kind of think Lothar might be part of the key to that. It's kind of ironic because it's a character that, like, if you look back, like I said, on that original version of Lothar, he might seem like kind of a stereotypical character. But if you look at how they did Lothar in the 80s version, I think you can see how like a modern day version of Lothar would work pretty well. I'd almost be afraid he'd steal the show from Mandrake, to be honest. But whatever. Anyway, that's pretty much it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.